Is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, along with former Oshkosh Mayor and Councilwoman Melanie Bloechl. There are 4 candidates running for the 54th Assembly District this fall, one from each party, each of the 4 parties. We've got Tony Palmieri running as a Green Party candidate, Dan Carpenter running as an independent candidate, Gordon Hentz as a Democratic candidate, and our guest on this edition of Eye on Oshkosh, the incumbent Gregg Underheim, running, of course, as a Republican. We appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
We know campaign season's busy, so we appreciate you taking the time out. You've obviously held the 54th Assembly District seat for a long time, since 1987. You were first elected in a special election, and then you've won re-election ever since 1988. You're currently the chairperson of the Health Committee, and certainly during your years in the Assembly, you've held other committee seats. Can you just kind of give us a brief bio of what other committees you've served on?
Sure. Oh gosh, over the years I've served on the Insurance Committee, Children and Families, colleges and universities. I spent a lot of time on colleges and universities primarily because we have a university here in this district. Oh gosh, let's see, corrections in the courts, which deals with a lot of prison issues. But most of my work, I've been on the Public Health Committee, most of my work has centered around healthcare issues and insurance issues, and I think that's my primary area of interest.
Okay. Now, you're seeking re-election. As we said, you've got 3 other people nipping at your heels here for your job. So you've got challengers, and then the Northwestern ran a poll, which I'm sure you were aware of, for probably, it was one of the longest running online polls, I think, that I've seen in a long time. And there were a lot of people who didn't score so highly for you in that. You know, how do you feel about the fact that so many people seem to be unhappy with the job that you're doing?
Well, Cheryl, I think we all know that online polls are notoriously not reflective of communities. People who have an interest in causing problems can vote often. They can email their friends to vote. So I really don't put much stock in them. There have been a number of polls that have been very supportive of things that I've been doing. I haven't run around touting those because I feel the same way. The poll that concerned reduction of the county board size, I think it was 9-1 in my favor. I wasn't running around touting it. I had proposed actually the legalization of marijuana for medical purposes. I think that came out at least 3-1 in my favor. I wasn't running around touting it, so I suspect, and my guess is, particularly on the marijuana poll, for example, those people who had an interest in the issue probably voted and got their friends to vote. I think in this poll, people who didn't particularly like me voted and got their friends to vote. So I don't think that's reflective of the public.
Well, sure,
and I think the general election votes demonstrate that.
Okay, but I mean, certainly Underheim supporters could be doing the same thing.
I choose not to play those games. I didn't email my friends. I didn't go out and do that stuff. If you want to make something about it, I guess it's your show and there's nothing I can do about it.
It was just a question, Greg. It was just a question. That's all right.
Greg, you had stated the various committees that you've served on. Right now you are the chair of the Health Committee, or
That's
Committee
correct.
on Health is actually the
Right.
proper terminology. How long have you served in that capacity as the
Since
chair?
1994.
1994. Healthcare is a huge issue.
Yes, it
Has
is.
been and probably is going to be
Continue to be.
increasing.
Yes.
Increasingly so. With you being the chair since 1994, have you brought legislation forward that can't get passed or can't get consensus in health care reform? Because that's what people are asking for, is where is this health care reform? We are dying out here. 80% of our local budgets are being spent in, insurances and premiums for insurances. Prescription drugs are outrageous. The state, just in the city of Oshkosh, you can see what's happening with the Auroras, the Mercies, the Theta Cares. What's happening with health care reform?
Sure. There are, the primary problem with healthcare is what's called the third-party payer phenomenon. In every other aspect of the marketplace, costs are controlled because the person that uses the service makes a cost-related decision. When I go out and buy a car, and my guess is when you go out and buy a car, the first thing I look at is what my monthly payments are going to be for the car that I buy. My guess is you're probably in the same category. People of not enormous means take a look at what the monthly payments are going to be. In healthcare, that phenomena does not exist. In healthcare, you have you receive the service, the provider gives the service, the insurance company pays for the service. Now, in a car transaction, the person that's getting the car or the product cares about price. In healthcare, the person receiving the product doesn't care about price. No one walks into the doctor's office and says, "Doc, today I want the Kmart of healthcare." With all due respect to Kmart, I have no offense intended to those folks, but so the user of the service doesn't win by getting a lower priced but reasonably high quality product. So no one asks for that. The problem is the way we pay for healthcare. You need to find a way to reorganize the payment structure so that people that make smart decisions in healthcare, smart decisions being you choose a quality product or a quality service at a reasonable cost. People that make that decision need to be rewarded for doing it. And we actually have done some things to move in that direction. Here's what you need to do to get in that direction. First, you need insurance products that allow people who make cost-effective quality decisions to be themselves economically rewarded. Secondly, you need information so that people know when they're making a cost-effective quality choice. So one of the things I've worked on extensively and have made great progress on is information. You may remember in 1998, the State Medical Society spent about $15,000 trying to beat me because I was collecting information from the physician community about cost, about frequency of procedure, about outcome of procedure. That's a quality measure and a cost measure. This last session of the legislature, we passed something, it's called health savings accounts. Here's the basic structure. Here's how they work. In most insurance plans right now, and here's what people have traditionally wanted. They have wanted low premiums, so when unions negotiate with employers, they try to get low premiums, they try to get low co-payments or co-insurance,
Right.
and low deductibles.
Mm-hmm.
So people who are negotiating for health care try to get a benefit package that requires little payment of them. The result is they put themselves in a situation where where there are no price considerations in that transaction. A health savings account does this. It gives the employee the same amount of money in terms of an insurance benefit, but it reorganizes it. What happens is you buy catastrophic care, and there's a premium for catastrophic care that's much less than the premium for full-blown first dollar or significant dollar coverage. The rest of the money is put into what's called a health savings account. So what you get is catastrophic coverage. Then you also need to get preventive care. That should be low cost or no cost to you. And visits to your primary care physician should be low cost or no cost. Because on the preventive side, it's smart to get you to your doctor. But then let's assume that maybe you're going to have some tests, and there are a wide array of places you might be able to go to get those tests. I remember when you ran against me, you talked about any willing provider. In the current healthcare system, any willing provider makes no sense because it drives up cost. In the structure I'm talking about now, any willing provider makes some sense, because in this system, a consumer, okay, let me go back and explain how it works. You have the high deductible catastrophic plan. Then you get money put into a healthcare savings account. So it's the same amount of money that would have been paid by your employer for your health insurance, but it's structured differently. Instead of all going into a premium, some goes into a premium and some you get. It's your money. It goes into a health savings account. If you never spend that money, after 30 years on the job, you would take that money and put it in your pocket and leave with it to retire. But what that does is this: every time you are going to make a healthcare decision, you're using some of your money, the money in the health savings account, and you are rewarded with savings of your money by making a cost-effective, quality decision. But to do that, you need good information. You've got to know what the quality providers, who the quality providers are. You need to know who the reasonable cost providers are. So if you choose one of those providers, you win economically. That's where we're trying to get. It's a significant reform. We've got some of the pieces in place, and we're slowly moving in that direction. But the result is employees don't lose any money over the current situation. It's just reorganized in terms of how they get it. And by making smart decisions, employees win.
So how does that actually control the bottom line cost? Because you've talked a lot about garnering information so that the employee can make decisions. Well, you can make decisions, but it's all about having your kidney removed at this hospital costs $5,000, and this is where your doctor is. Going to this hospital costs you $3,000, and your doctor doesn't have privileges there. I mean, how does what you're talking about actually control the bottom line costs of healthcare? Because that's what's happening, is the cost of the procedures, the cost of actually having care has become
enormous.
It's ridiculous.
It has become enormous. It's become a huge problem.
And what is driving those costs?
Well, okay, the top three drivers are hospital care, physician care, and drugs. Those are the top three drivers. And okay, right now, when you talk about healthcare pricing, there are two different prices. There's the stated price, and then there's the real price. You're an insurance company. I'm a provider. So you come to me and you say, Greg, now I know that for a heart bypass, your stated price is $50,000. But here's what we're going to do. I have a whole lot of people insured. I don't want to pay $50,000 for that service. I'll pay you $36,000. So I look at the number of employees you have and say, okay, I'll take the $36,000 reimbursement from you, the insurance company. So the stated price is $50,000, but the actual real price that the insurer is paying the provider is $36,000. Now, here's where we get to the savings.
Yeah.
Some providers charge $36,000. Other providers may charge $45,000. Other providers may charge $27,000. Now, there are complicating factors. It could be that the provider that charges $27,000 only does 9 bypasses a month. It could be the provider that charges $36,000 does 30 bypasses a month. Well, quality tends to be indicated by volume. So you probably want to go to the higher volume provider because that's one of the quality indicators. But let's assume you have one charging $36,000 doing 30 bypasses a month, and one charging $27,000 doing 30 bypasses a month. Now, if the employee can win by choosing the less expensive provider and saving $9,000 or saving money for him or herself, then the system wins because less dollars are going out to the providers. So you've got to create a system wherein the patient, the individual receiving the service, can look at the true reimbursement rate and make an honest choice looking at the real price, not the stated price, the real price.
My problem with that is, and I don't want to get into a debate because this is a question-answer type thing, and we can get hung up on healthcare
Okay.
for the next millennium.
That's okay. It's a good topic.
One of the things that I have concern with is basically the comment that you made with the Kmart, no pun intended here, Kmart brand of healthcare, because the system that you're setting up is saying, okay, if you pick the cheaper healthcare, which doesn't necessarily mean it's the quality healthcare, you win. Now, the way things are going in this society, where more and more people are unemployed, more and more people simply don't have insurance, the drive is going to be not to quality health care, but cheap.
Well,
Is that where we really want our health care to go? Is like, well, you know, Bob can only afford Bob the open heart surgeon here, and, you know, the wealthy get to go to the really good people and the poor get to go to the really crappy people.
no, that's not where we're going. And the assumption that you're making is that high cost equates to high quality.
But you just said that high cost equates to
No.
more procedures being done.
No, high volume. If you do something a lot, you tend to be better at it. But those people who do it a lot aren't necessarily the people that charge the most. I mean, frequently, if you go to a market like Milwaukee, for example, where you have lots of people doing heart things, lots of people doing knee things, lots of people doing, you know, different body part things, what you discover is that there is an enormous range of reimbursements for the same services. And what you'll discover is that the high-priced people, meaning when I say high-priced, I mean price for a specific incident. Let's assume you need to get a knee done, okay? The price for doing your knee may be very high at one place, and those people that charge a whole lot do a whole lot of knees. You may discover that there's another provider in that same market that does the same volume of knees, a lot of knees, but the price is significantly less. So if volume is an indicator of quality, and you're a smart shopper, the thing you want to do is go to the place where the price is somewhat less, but the volume is higher. Now, beyond that, I'm working on other ways to measure quality. And I mean, I'm going to take some credit for things that are going on in the private sector because the people that are doing them are giving me credit for it. Right now, the Wisconsin Hospital Association, and there's a group called the Collaborative, Touchpoint's part of it, Affinity's part of it, they're sitting down with employers and they're trying to come up with quality measures. So employers are sitting on one side of the table, healthcare providers are sitting on the other side of the table, and they're sitting down and they are aggressively arguing with one another about how you measure quality. And they're doing that primarily because in 1998 I passed the bill collecting data from doctors. Doctors hated that bill, but it's forced them to sit down and have honest conversations with purchasers, the employers, about how you assess quality in healthcare. So
you believe that these things that you're talking about are going to bring forth in the very near future serious healthcare reform that will be a huge cost savings to municipalities, employers, and the like? Because I'll tell
I
you,
believe that. Here's what I believe.
I
believe we're on the right path.
but how long is that going to take us to get there? Because we don't have a whole lot more time.
Well, the
We've
answer
got
is
HMOs, PPOs, POSs that are crapola. I mean, people are not happy with this. We've got the premiums are outrageous. People are paying $900 a month.
okay. I mean, I disagree with you to some extent. I mean, I know we're not here in a debating society, but I disagree with you to some extent. I think people are unhappy about price. Clearly, they're unhappy about price.
Not being able to choose their physicians.
Right. They're unhappy about not being able to choose their physician. But in terms of overall quality, for the most part, people recognize the healthcare system as being reasonably good. They're frustrated about how they're sort of jerked around sometimes. But in terms of quality, people are somewhat contented. And the irony is that in some instances, the quality is not what people think it really is. Quality could be improved greatly. Here's what I think. I mean, if you want massive reform tomorrow, that's not going to happen. I can't make that happen. Jim Doyle can't make that happen. Tommy Thompson's not going to make that happen as Secretary of Health and Family Services. John Kerry won't make it happen. George Bush won't make it happen. But I'm telling you, we are on the right track. We are beginning to put into place the elements that will create a more reasonably priced, high-quality healthcare system. And let me give you an example. What today is Thursday, okay? Yesterday I was in West Bend talking to a man that runs a business down in West Bend. And the healthcare plan that I described to you, he's put in place down there. He saved this last quarter 22% off the previous quarter. Now I'm not promising that everybody's going to save 22%. I don't know what the results are. But what happened is his employees now win by making price-conscious, quality decisions. They come out ahead in their pocketbooks by making those decisions.
Well,
He's demonstrating
let's
this
go
works.
one further.
I need to jump in
Yeah.
here.
Okay, well,
We've got a lot of questions, and I don't want to be rude to either one of you, but there are some things that need to be said and asked. That's all great for people who are working and who qualify for the health savings accounts. What about the people, Mr. Underheim, who don't qualify or who don't work? What is being done for them? And they don't qualify for Badger Care. What about those people who are falling through the cracks, and there are a tremendous amount of them?
Okay, if you look at the state of Wisconsin on a percentage basis, we are among the best states in the country. If you look at Hawaii, Hawaii has a mandatory required health care system. Wisconsin has fewer uninsured than Hawaii. So are there people who don't get health care? Yes. Are there problems? Yes. But Wisconsin has done a better job than virtually any state in the nation in getting health care to people who don't have it. We stand behind no one. Badger Care is a model program. The notion behind Badger Care is that if some people can't afford health care because they don't make enough money, the state will subsidize their purchase of health care.
Not
That
single
is right.
people, though.
You're correct.
Not
single people. No,
So,
right. Single people with kids, yes, but not single people without kids.
right, if
That's
you're
correct.
a single person without children, you can't get it.
That's correct. But we have made enormous progress in the area of children. But are there some people who are still uninsured? Yes. There are some single people who if you look at the statistics, there are some single people who could, if they chose, allocate resources toward health care, but they choose not to do it. Other single people clearly don't have the income to afford that. That's certainly an issue. I don't deny it. Also, the hospitals in the state of Wisconsin must accept people if they walk in through the emergency room, so that is an outlet as well. And hospitals have, I forget the number, it's a fairly large amount of uncompensated care that the hospitals have. But in terms of providing care for the uninsured and working to keep costs low, Wisconsin is second to none in terms of providing care for people that don't have care. And if you take a look at the statistics, we're better off than Hawaii, and we do extremely well. Can we do better? Absolutely. But I think you have to ask that question in the context of what's going on in the rest of the country. And in the rest of the country, we are absolutely leaders in solving that problem.
Do you see us ever moving toward, seriously moving toward some type of general type health care that's available to everyone?
That's what we're trying to do now. I mean, are you talking about a government
Socialized type medicine. I don't like that word, socialized medicine, but something where the government says everyone will be taken care of.
I hope the day does not come that we end up having the healthcare system run by the government. It will be a disaster. There's a group called...
But it's so heavily legislated now, it's basically being run by the government.
That's not true. If we're run by the government, we'd have a lot better information, and we'd be able to control quality to a greater extent. But I'm a part of a group called the Reforming States Group. They're funded by what's called the Milbank Fund. And it's a bunch of state legislators that get together from around the different states, and we talk about health care reform. One of the participants in that group is a fellow by the name of John Nielsen. He is a health minister from one of the provinces up in Canada. And I chuckle about John. He's a good guy. And John says, in Canada, there are no waiting lists. There are no waiting lists in Canada. And then he proceeded to talk to us at length about how they determine who gets in line for surgery. And your doctors sort of give you points. And if you have from 95 to 100 points, you get in tomorrow, or it's like in 3 days. If you have, what is it? I forget the exact point ranges, but the next point range gets you in within 10 days or so. Then the next point in range gets you within a month, and the next point in range gets you in within 6 months. Or I mean, that's a rough estimate of what it is. But if there is no waiting list in Canada, why in the world do they need to establish a priority order for who gets surgery? The point of the matter is, all government-run healthcare systems are great for the first 10 years. Then they're underfunded and they simply fall apart. I hope we don't do that. I believe the system that I just described here can be successful, but what happens to make it successful is this. People have to be willing to take charge in their own lives for their health care. I mean, we believe people should be in charge of their children. We believe that people should be in charge of their homes and their mortgages. We have to have people be willing to take charge of their health care. And that means make decisions, conscious decisions about cost and quality. And if people are not willing to do that, if they're not willing to look at the data on cost and data on quality, then we may end up with a government healthcare system. But in my opinion, that will be a disaster. And I don't think I don't think the public will be benefited in the long run by that kind of system. When you look at Germany and Britain, they're looking. Oh no, I'm not sure about Germany. They'll look at Britain though. They're looking at finding ways to go back toward a private model. So I think those people who have walked down the path of sort of a government-dominated, term used, socialized, government-dominated healthcare system, they do not like the results in the end, and the public is not happy at the end of the day.
Can I ask just two more real quick questions? One's my own, one's from a viewer. Just a curious question that I have, and maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't. Do you know why a healthcare provider is able to charge an insurance company significantly higher prices than if a person has no health care, then they get charged a lesser price? They're performing, case in point, a chiropractor. If they're billing an insurance company for their service, they can charge, and I've seen it done, they can charge $50, $60. If that person does not have chiropractic coverage and they're a private self-pay, the charge is $28 for the same service. Now I understand you got to cover paperwork costs, but not that kind of a price increase. And I think really that is helping to spin these healthcare costs out of control.
It usually happens the other way. It usually happens that the insured price tends to be less than the private pay price. Now, and the dollar amounts as you gave here are perhaps a bit inflated, at least for. I mean,
no, not at all. Not at all.
I'm not sure that there's any chiropractor that gets $50 for a. I guess it depends on the service.
I personally have seen it.
Here's my guess. My guess is, I could be mistaken on this. My guess is that's their stated price. They send in the bill for that volume. The insurance company then takes a look at the discount arrangement they've organized with that particular chiropractor and cuts them a check for the discounted amount.
Okay.
They bill $50 if that's the number, and they cut the check for $24.
Because I always thought that was just so weird.
Yeah,
I mean, if this is your price and you can do it for this, then you should be able to do it for that.
But most often, the individual without insurance is the one that gets screwed. What happens is, if you walk into a hospital or other places without insurance, you're the one that ends up paying the most. Now,
and that's not fair either.
Right, exactly correct.
Exactly
correct. And that's why the MSA, or I'm sorry, the HSA type of account, where you have good information about price, good information about quality, and allows you to make some choices in the marketplace over real pricing, can have a very positive impact on healthcare. And we're trudging in that direction. I can't say we're not screaming in that direction, but we're trudging in that direction.
I'd like to hear screaming, but
okay,
if you want to trudge, I guess.
We'll see how the rest of the interview goes.
Yeah. All right, real quickly then, and then I'm going to toss it back to Mel for a few minutes. Question from a viewer: what % of the money that's donated to your coffers comes from the very healthcare industry that we the people expect you to control? And just for the viewer, I know you sent a whole paragraph here of questions, but in fairness to other viewers, I'm just going to have to kind of pick and choose so that we can kind of stay on topic here. So Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the answer is I have no idea. But I will tell you this. If you take a look at the healthcare providers, in 1998, as I mentioned, the doctors spent $15,000 trying to beat me. The hospitals have not endorsed me. I haven't asked them for any money this campaign, and if I do, I'm not certain they'll give me much. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I take my job as a trustee of the public good extraordinarily seriously. I've been talking to some Republicans in Madison recently, and the fact of the matter is, as a committee chair, I get less money from the interests that my committee oversees than probably any other person in Madison. Go look at the campaign reports. You will not see a whole lot of doctor money there. You will see very little hospital money there. Those are the primary, the chiropractors I think are supportive of me. But other healthcare interests don't give me much money. And
Including the insurance companies?
I get some money from insurance industry, yes, but they're not particularly generous contributors of money. I think I'm not sure if I've gotten any PAC money
Really,
from
they're
them.
the only ones who are making any money.
Well, but
They are. I mean, if you look,
Just look
you
at
can
their
see-
buildings, you can see.
Well, no, if
look at the healthcare buildings going up too.
well, if you look at the profit margins when they make out their reports, they're making pretty good money at any given time.
Actually, not at any given time. If you take a look at insurance company reports over a period of just a few years back, they were actually not doing particularly well.
That's true.
And then, actually, we had a great fight in the insurance committee over this issue a while back with property and casualty insurers as well. It was sort of a really interesting exchange. What happened was the property and casualty guys came in and they were just crying about how terrible things were and we were asking them about premium increases and such, and it was just, woe is me, that we're just not making any money. And someone, I asked the question, isn't it true that you're increasing premiums because we're in a bad economy and the stock market has dropped, and the result is the revenue that you generate from the stock market, in fact, is down, and you need to recapture that money in premiums? And I said, no, we don't invest in stocks. And,
Really?
Okay. And so I thought for a couple of minutes. He said we invest in bonds. We invest in bonds. And so I thought for a minute. I said, well, we've just gone through, or we were heading into or just coming sort of through a recession. If we're going through a recession, the interest rates continue to drop. So isn't it true that your portfolio has dropped in value because the bonds have gone down and your interest rates have got to go up? And he sort of kind of acknowledged that was the truth. But so the point is, sometimes insurance companies make money, sometimes insurance companies don't make money. But
I think the point here is that, to piggyback on Cheryl's question, if you receive any money from
Sure.
insurance companies,
And I do receive some,
Yeah.
yes. I don't know how much it is, and I don't know who sends it to me.
well,
It's true.
come on, Greg.
Melanie, it is the
You
truth.
have to report that stuff. You know who John Harms is. You know who these guys
Okay.
are.
My-
You know they sit
I
on
get checks.
Touchpoint Network. You know who they are.
I don't know if John Harms has given me any money at all. I have no idea. I suspect he hasn't.
You don't look at your campaign finance reports?
Tom Allen, my treasurer, sends them in. The checks come to my house. I open up the checks and take them over to Tom. The fact of the matter is, I cannot tell you right now how much money people have given me. I don't know, maybe when you ran against me, you knew who gave you how much money.
I knew exactly who gave you how much money, and I knew who gave me
you.
money. Oh,
I
yeah.
don't. I don't.
But
that
why
may be
wouldn't you?
hard to, because it doesn't matter.
It should matter.
No, it
and-
shouldn't.
Sure, it should. Because
No,
here's
it
the thing:
shouldn't.
how can you honestly say that it can't make a difference? Because being the chair of the healthcare committee, you are one of the most powerful guys in one of the most controversial issues of our time, and that's healthcare. And the very people that this will affect are the insurance companies, doctors, hospitals, employers. How can you, taking money from insurance companies that you may re-regulate, you may change legislation, you may be asking for more information? Come on, Greg, that's not a stretch to think that there could be a conflict of interest there.
Okay, there's nothing I can do if you don't believe me when I say I do not know how much money I get
But
from
why
insurance.
wouldn't you know? Why wouldn't you want to know where the money is coming from so that
Because
there wouldn't be a perceived conflict?
The only conflict that's existing is one that you're trying to create right here.
I'm not trying to create anything. I'm asking you a question. Why would you not want to know where money was coming from, where it's flowing from to you for your
Because
campaign so that there could be no perceived conflict of interest?
I don't make a point to know, and I don't make a point to know because I don't want to be influenced by people who give me money. Now that may sound like a strange thing to say, but if you look at my record in the legislature, it is undeniably true. Independent external review of HMOs. That's a law that says if you're in an HMO and the HMO refuses to give you some treatment that you think is legitimate, you are allowed to go to an independent panel, completely apart from the HMO,
True.
and have that independent panel determine whether or not that service should be provided. I authored that legislation.
And why
then on
did you
top
have
of
to
that,
author that? But let's just
no,
go
but on
back.
top, no, wait,
What-
let me finish
how
what
did
else
you-
that law does.
How did you
Melanie,
come to that point?
That's
Because
not
we were
the
having
only
problems.
thing. That's not the only thing the law does. In Wisconsin, apart from other states, in Wisconsin, that law doesn't just include HMOs, it includes insurance companies. It says if an insurance company will not reimburse for a service that you have received, you have the right to go to the independent external review committee and challenge that refusal to reimburse. And if the independent review organization sides with you, the insurance company must reimburse. The fact of the matter is, nobody has been tougher on the insurance industry in the state of Wisconsin as a state legislator than I have. I have passed laws that have forced them to pony up to provide services to people who deserve to get the services who paid for the insurance. My
Okay.
record is incredibly clear on that.
I have
Now-
one other direction I want to go here, and then let's move on from healthcare because, like I said, we could go on forever and ever and ever in healthcare. One point, back in 2002 at a UWO candidates forum, one of the things that you had discussed,
Okay.
actually promised, is that you were going to be a watchdog of prescription drug costs. That this was going to be a big impetus of what you were going to do in the following session.
Yes.
And yet, when the Northwestern did their story on prescription drug cost disparities from pharmacy to pharmacy to pharmacy, you were quoted as saying that you were shocked and dismayed that there were these huge disparities and that you had no idea that this existed.
I don't think I said I was dismayed. I said I was shocked.
Well,
I was
if
surprised.
you
I was
were-
truly surprised.
If you were being the watchdog that you promised that you were going to be back in 2002, why shocked?
I did not know that a pharmacy in Amro was selling a drug for $15, and I'm happy they were. But let me tell you what I have done. Okay, first off, I authored legislation early in last term, the bulk of which ended up in Governor Doyle's budget, so it actually became law, that created a market mechanism called a preferred drug list, which helps to control drug costs in the Medicaid program and the state programs as well. The bulk of what was in his bill, I had authored and put into a bill. Secondly, I don't know if you've heard of the Canadian Drug Service.
Yes.
I brought those folks down to the Senior Citizen Center and instructed people on how to work with them to go to Canada to get drugs. When people call me about drug questions, I talk about the Canadian Drug Service. I've done a whole lot to encourage competition. I'm all in favor of people going to Canada. I will say this. I would be careful about Mexico because there could be counterfeit drugs down there. I think the Canadian equivalent of the FDA, I think, is a very serious regulatory body. And I think they're very careful about what gets into Canada and what's sold in Canada. I don't know about Mexico, and because I don't know about Mexico, I would be very careful about Mexico. I also would be very careful about the internet. You can claim anything on the internet, and it's impossible to check out. But if you are dealing with the Canadian Drug Service, for example, which is run by a guy down in southern Wisconsin, he works with very specific pharmacies in Canada.
But I want to get back to why you were shocked.
Oh,
If you
because
were
I
the
didn't know.
watchdog, why shocked?
I didn't know. I didn't go to Amro and ask the guy what he sold drugs for. I'm glad the Northwestern did. It put some real more impetus to the debate. I didn't know the guy was doing that. But as a public policy matter, I have acted aggressively to deal with drug costs. PDLs are an aggressive effort to deal with that. Canada Drug Service right here in Oshkosh is an aggressive effort to deal with that. I've also put out a bill, it was toward the end of the session, Northwestern's commented on it, which required a statement of pricing in pharmacies. The pharmacies, of course, completely opposed it, and we're
Is
able
that
to...
coming? I mean, is that
at the end of
here?
this- no, it isn't here.
When will it be here?
I don't know if
'Cause
it'll
I
ever
think-
be here.
I think it should be here.
I do too, and I put it out as a bill, but unfortunately I wasn't able to push it through. There are other people who perhaps are more influenced by healthcare lobbying groups than I am, and I think that's a fair statement.
Okay, Cheryl, go
But
ahead.
they're not. but they're not putting out bills like that, and I am. If you look at the legislation I have proposed and the legislation I have passed, if you look at the list of people who've contributed to my campaign, you will see that the actions I take in the legislature are completely unaffected by the people that give me money. And in fact,
so you
I don't
do know who's giving you money.
I know I've got I know I've gotten money from insurance companies because you've told me. You told me I got it. But do I know from which insurance companies? I don't. Do I know how much? I have no idea. And frankly, I have no intention of finding out, and I don't care.
Okay.
And if I call them and ask them for money and they say no, so be it.
Okay.
Someone who I respect a lot said, take money from whoever will give it to you and then do what you think is right. And that's what I have been doing.
Okay. We had a number of questions about Tabor, Taxpayers' Bill of Rights.
Right.
Do you believe that local government officials in Oshkosh are big spenders? And if not, why do you and have you supported Tabor?
I think the taxpayers in the state of Wisconsin deserve a break. I think when you take a look at taxes in this state, we are among the highest tax states overall in the country. That includes state and local taxes, and something has to be done about it. And there's one candidate in this race that's a friend of the taxpayer, and that is me. The rest of the guys talk about how they're going to control spending, but the fact of the matter is, when push comes to shove, they won't. I don't know. I haven't heard debated Tony. My guess is Tony will be in favor of services, and then he will probably support taxing to pay for them. That's an honest position. I can respect that, but he and I would disagree on that. I think we are a high tax state, and here's the measure that matters most. When you take a look at ability to pay and level of taxation, Wisconsin is one of the highest taxed states in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the level of millionaires in Wisconsin on a per capita basis is very small. That is a bad thing. Millionaires buy stuff and pay sales tax. Millionaires have income and pay income tax. They leave this state because our taxes are high. We want rich people in Wisconsin because they contribute to the economy. Have you heard of the term angel investors?
Yes.
Exactly correct. Rich people are able to put money into investment opportunities and do some angel investing and sort of high-risk investing. We want that in the state of Wisconsin, but our tax rates drive those people out of the state. And
But
I
why-
am willing to say it is time to stop the taxing and spending.
But why do you continue to support Tabor if Richard Wallink is calling you up and saying, Greg, this could be a disaster for us? It could affect our services, it could affect our ability for new bonding, for new structures, for anything new.
Well, Dick hasn't called me up and said that. He may think that, and he may, after the show, call me up and say that.
But
He hasn't
nobody,
called me up and said
no
that.
community leader has talked to you about their displeasure with
Oh,
Tabor.
yes, that's happened. Yeah, that's
So
happened.
if you have people who are working with local budgets who will have to somehow figure out how services are going to be provided once this legislation is enacted, why do you support this, and how does it make Oshkosh a better place? How does it help the 54th Assembly District?
I have been knocking on doors in Oshkosh, as I always do. These are some of the streets I knocked on tonight. When I knock on doors, the number one issue that people raise to me, sometimes I ask people what's the number one, or what do you care about in terms of the state of Wisconsin? Sometimes without my asking, they say to me it's taxes. Primarily senior citizens, many of them on fixed incomes. They cannot afford the property taxes. It is driving them out of their homes. That is a problem. If you are in touch with people in this community, you know that that is a problem in the city of Oshkosh and frankly cities all over the rest of the state of Wisconsin.
So why
But
don't
aren't
you
these
just
things
stop the
that the
spending?
legislature is being paid to do? I mean, you guys are being paid $45,000 a year plus health insurance benefits and everything else. I mean, isn't this a responsibility that you guys should be doing and you ladies should be doing in Madison?
Okay, well, and Tabor, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, is an attempt to do something about that. It's an attempt to cap how rapidly government can grow. Right now in the state of Wisconsin. All right, let's talk about what the bill actually does. So let's get off the generalizations. Taxpayer Bill of Rights says that government cannot grow more rapidly than the personal income, the rate of growth of personal income in the state of Wisconsin. The average rate of growth of personal income in the state of Wisconsin is about somewhere around 5.5%, 5.2, 5.5, somewhere in that neighborhood. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights says that government can only grow at 90% of that rate. That means that government can still continue to grow. It just can't grow quite as rapidly as the rate of growth of personal income. That means in the long run, government will become a smaller share of our economy. That is a good thing. That means people will have more dollars in their pockets to spend, they'll be able to make more choices, and government will have to find ways to become more efficient.
And they will start assessing more users' fees, which is just another hocus-pocus move to raise taxes.
No, they won't.
Yes, they will. They've done it.
They will do it if the public says that's okay. If the public does not say that's okay, the public will say, we've had it with you. We don't want any more fees to be assessed. We don't want any more games to be played. We want you to find ways to curtail your spending or be more efficient.
Where could that happen here in Oshkosh then, Greg?
I don't look at the Oshkosh City budget, but if you're asking me, do I think that the school board just increased the budget by 8.5%? I mean, I think those are good people. I don't think they're indecent, bad human beings.
Right.
But my guess is 8.5 is perhaps a little high. Now, I don't look at their state budgets, I don't look at their city budgets, and I don't look at the school district budget, but I'm willing to bet there are places to find where dollars can be saved. And I think constraining the ability to spend forces people to be efficient. Let's talk about combining services. Let's talk about finding ways to get to larger regional governments. You probably can find ways to have metropolitan police forces. Perhaps you can find ways to have fire forces combined. I'm sure you can find ways to save dollars. I mean, certainly you believe that the city of Oshkosh, and tell you what, I will grant you the city of Oshkosh is frugal compared to other cities. I think that's a very fair statement. But it's hard for me to believe that they can't find ways to save or not spend more money.
Well, I agree with you to a point when it comes to things like Riverside Park projects and things like that. I agree with you there. And you're right. We do have to tell these people on the city council, stop spending money foolishly down there. But those are funds that they haven't technically spent yet, and yet we've already had shared revenues cut.
That should be our job, though, to tell them, not yours. As taxpayers, we have the right to tell them by virtue of voting them out. We shouldn't exonerate ourselves or abdicate our responsibility and give it to you and say, you know what, we're going to legislate and we're just going to say we're going to cap everybody's spending. Why can't, if people don't want those things, they have to get off their duffs and do something about it. But you're the same guy who supported cutting shared revenue. You supported now this all ties in, Greg, so bear with me.
Okay.
You supported cutting shared revenue, which put the city in a position that they had to find a way to make up for lost revenue. I won't promise I won't say anything that you can't comment to because his mic just fell off. So the city had to find a way to make up for that lost revenue. Now you're talking about putting in place the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, which will also have to find a way to, because you're capping the way that we can raise money and deciding how we do business locally. So at some point, people already are mad as hell in the city of Oshkosh because we've closed down a pool, we've had to cut back services. We were looking at cutting 6 firefighters at one time, and the firefighters support you. Now you're supporting Tabor, and we may have to go right back to that kind of stuff again. So I'm a little confused. I mean,
And we're paying to get rid of some of our trash.
yeah, and we've got more user fees than we ever did. I mean, at some point, you've got to admit that cutting shared revenue, Tabor legislation is putting the hammer on us in a way that we're just going to have to limit what we do as a city, right? I mean, should we stop doing redevelopment? Should we stop doing economic development? Should we just provide police, fire, and garbage?
Okay, first off, your premise that you'll only be left with police, fire, and garbage is an inaccurate premise. Let's go back to the points that you've made. First, in reference to shared revenue, the reason shared revenue took a hit was not because people said, "Oh, I've got an idea. Let's go cut shared revenue." Shared revenue took a hit because the economy turned down in the year 2000. Then
You guys had a structural deficit that you didn't fix, and you used shared revenue to plug the hole.
No, that is not the truth. The fact of the matter is we could have gotten through all that problem had the recession not happened, and then we could have conceivably made it through the recession, but 9/11 happened. All of a sudden, people's behavior changed. They stopped spending. When people stop spending, sales tax revenues are affected
You
dramatically.
overestimated your revenues.
Well, no one, I think, anticipated 9/11. So I think, yes, it's true, we overestimated revenues, but I think you have to acknowledge that the 9/11 issue
I
was
don't disagree that that had
Right.
some bearing, but I don't think it
It
had
had-
the bearing to put the structural deficit
it
in
had
the...
an enormous bearing because people became very cautious. We were going into a recession. People became very cautious. They stopped spending. And when people stop spending, people don't need to make things anymore, and the economy began to turn down and did continue to turn down. So the state of Wisconsin was looking at a serious revenue problem. Governor Doyle, to his credit, in his budget, put out a frugal budget, and the legislature honored his frugal intent in that budget and did not increase spending. We may have cut spending a little bit over what he did. I don't remember the specific number, but we honored his intent. Now, in his budget, Governor Doyle, Democrat Governor Doyle, made a number of cuts. Among those cuts was a shared revenue cut. Nobody said, "Oh, good, let's go get cities." That's not what it was about. It was about a downturn in revenue for the state of Wisconsin. And if revenues come back, one would hope that shared revenue can be continued to be funded at a reasonable level. But I would point out that when that shared revenue hit took place, that gave us an opportunity to rework the shared revenue formula. Oshkosh has continually gotten screwed in the shared revenue formula because they are not a high spending city. Shared revenue formula rewards high spending cities. I don't know if it's fair to say that it punishes low spending cities, but it certainly does not reward them to the extent that it rewards high spending cities. We reworked the shared revenue formula to reward low spending communities.
So how does Tabor...
Hold on.
I know, but Greg, we've got to move because we've got to find out how shared revenue cuts and now Tabor, how does this make Oshkosh better? How does this help us?
Melanie, give me a chance to make the honest points of good things that I did for the city of Oshkosh. In that shared revenue formula revision, we went through several revisions of that formula. We finally got to the revision we got to because I continued to insist that low spending communities got screwed. And when that formula came out, Oshkosh recaptured about $400,000 of the $1 million that Governor Doyle took away. He then vetoed that revision. But I think it is fair to say I worked my tail off to make sure that Oshkosh got the best deal possible in that difficult budget situation. Now, I'll get to your Tabor question. The answer is, when I knock on doors and talk to people, the number one issue that comes up is taxes. Secondly, when I talk to job creators, the people that are making investments in communities, the people that are investing in the expansion of businesses, they tell me the two issues that matter most, well, there are three issues now. The two issues that matter most in job creation are tax level and regulatory environment. And you have got to do something about tax levels, state and property tax levels in the state of Wisconsin. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights is an attempt to address the number one issue in terms of economic development in the state of Wisconsin, which is our high tax rates. Now, something has to be done, and all the constitutional amendment says is the people can vote on it. I trust the public here. If the public thinks you're right, if the public thinks, no, we don't want taxes controlled, we're willing to trust our local officials to control spending, they're going to vote it down. But I think it's fair to put it to them. I think it's fair to ask them the question, do you want to see spending in the state of Wisconsin controlled to what is, quite frankly, a minimal amount over a period of years? What will happen is government will grow slightly smaller in terms of the rest of the economy. Government will still grow, but it will grow at a less rapid rate than the rest of the economy. And I think it is a very reasonable restriction on government. And if the public doesn't think so, when they get a chance to vote on that constitutional amendment, they can say no. But I'm telling you right now, I've been talking to people on the doors, and I'm very happy to line myself up as a friend of the taxpayer. Because I
They
think
don't
that's the
understand
right
it, Greg.
Well,
No, they
You
don't.
know,
That doesn't
they
mean-
don't understand it, just
that
like they
doesn't
didn't
mean-
understand shared revenue.
But that
That's
doesn't-
the problem.
That doesn't mean I'm not doing the right thing. Just because there are people out there that don't understand the
The
taxpayer bill of rights.
ramifications of the taxpayer bill of rights.
I think the ramifications are positive. I mean, your argument essentially is government is not getting enough money.
No,
That's your argument.
My argument is that you are abdicating your responsibility as a legislator to cut spending where you know it needs to be done at your level, and you want to cap everybody's spending because you guys don't have the cojones to do it yourself. We're right here local. Our people can vote us in, vote us out, come to council meetings. They'll tell us what we want. They can't get to you as easily.
There are elections all the time.
Yeah, but you're in Madison. We're right here at their back door.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap it up because we're just about out of time. Greg, why don't you take about 45 seconds, look into camera 3, tell folks why they should vote for you this November.
Well, first of all, thank you too for an opportunity to talk about
Thank
this
you
here.
for coming, Greg.
And thanks for the opportunity to talk to the taxpayers of the city of Oshkosh. I think in this race in the 54th Assembly District, there is a friend of the taxpayer. There is one friend of the taxpayer, and that's me, Gregg Underheim. I am willing to say that government should be limited in how rapidly it should grow. And I'm the one candidate that is willing to limit how rapidly government should grow. Additionally, I have worked very hard on health care issues. I've worked on transparency, which means making pricing information available to you and quality information available to you. I've worked very hard on that. Thirdly, I knock on doors. I think there is no politician in the city of Oshkosh that works harder at being in touch with his constituency than I do. When I knock on people's doors, I try very hard to engage them in conversation. I try to talk about what's going on in their lives in the city of Oshkosh and the state of Wisconsin. So I hope you'll consider me and vote for me in the race for the 54th Assembly District. Thank you for your attention and consideration.
All right. Thanks again very much for being here. We didn't get to anywhere near the questions that folks had
We'll
sent in.
have to have you come back,
so
Greg.
we hope that you'll be willing to come back. We didn't bloody you too badly, so. and
Greg's used to that stuff. He does the bloodying back, right, Greg?
Thank you, folks, also for joining us. It's been a pleasure as always. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care and keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.